I'm impressed with these cards. I'm excited to see what they create in the future. I'm more excited to see what other people think about these cards. Like you, the viewer, I want to know your opinion. This is the newest card, Battle, and I want to give credit where credit is due. The person who really told me how this works is Sean Dunn. He explained in a previous comment in a video that essentially it's kind of like a planeswalker, except you summon it, you can attack it, and when it dies, it transforms into something. I think it's a cool concept. I'm very interested to see what effects they have. And yeah, another big shout out to Sean Dunn for the amazing comment. And also everybody who watches, I receive a lot of good comments, and I just want to say thank you to all of you. You're honestly teaching me and anybody else who reads the comments. So thank you, I appreciate it. Regardless, let's start off with Invasion of Ravnica, 5 mana. It's sideways, okay. As this siege enters, choose an opponent to protect it. You and others can attack it. When it is defeated, exile it and cast it transform. Okay. When it enters the battlefield, exile target non-land permanent and opponent controls that isn't exactly 2 colors. For 5 mana, you can remove 1 monster. Okay, what does it transform into? Let's see. Oh, look at the animation. Guild Pack Patagon. What does that mean? Oh, because it's a transform, it doesn't require mana. Artifact Creature Construct. Whenever you cast a spell that's exactly 2 colors, you may look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal a card from there's exactly 2 from among them, put it in your hand. It's a 5/5. So you remove an opponent's monster for 5 mana. That's not good, but it is something. And then if the thing dies, you summon a guy who kind of like searches you cards. It's not good. Yeah, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's not good. It's interesting, but it's not good. El Schnorn, 4 mana. Vigilance. Whenever a source an opponent controls deals damage to you or a permanent you control, that source's controller loses 2 life unless they pay 1 mana. That's kind of a bad effect. Unless you can like stack it multiple times and you just burn them over and over and over. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think that's a good effect. For 3, you can sacrifice 3 other creatures, exile this card, return it to the battlefield transformed. What does it transform into for 3 monsters and 3 mana? What do you get? The Argent Etching. As this saga enters, after your draw step, add a lore counter. Incubate 2 5 times, then transform all incubator tokens you control. Creatures you control get 1/1 and gain double strike. Okay, that is cool. Destroy all other permanents except for artifact lands and Phyrexians. Exile, then return it to the battlefield. Front face up. Oh, okay. So it gets you a bunch of advantage, makes your monsters strong, and then it nukes the board, destroys everything, and then just goes back to being the normal version, which is weak. Yeah, I mean, it's powerful, but at the end of the day, 4 mana to summon a monster that doesn't really do much. It's just like a vanilla with vigilance. Yeah, you can burn your opponent for 2 life, but who cares? That doesn't really do much. Or you can pay 3 mana, sacrifice 3 monsters, and then you can get amazing effects. It's an expensive card. I don't think it's worth it necessarily. Eldian, the Radiant Dawn, 4 mana. When this card enters the battlefield, return target enhancement that isn't a god from your graveyard to your hand. Amazing effect, especially for 4 mana. For 3 mana plus blood, transform this card. What does it transform into? Eldian, the Warped Eclipse. He looks evil now. Why? Oh, he's a Phyrexian now. Legendary enhancement creature. You may cast spells as though they had flash. Spells you cast cost 1 less to cast for each card your opponent has drawn this turn. That's a little bizarre. Your opponent needs to draw in order for the second effect to be active. It's good against some decks, but against other decks it's just useless. But your spells have flash. That's a very powerful effect, especially for 4/6. I think it's a good card. I think this is a genuinely good card because even at its normal form for 4 mana, you still get an enhancement out of your graveyard. You get advantage. And then you can only pay 3 mana. You don't have to pay 3 mana plus sacrifice 3 other creatures. It's just 3 mana. And then you get this guy who can like let your spells do flash. I think that's cool. That's a really good one. Invasion of Belonon, 3 mana. Battle Siege. When this card enters the battlefield, create a 2/2 blue and white creature token with vigilance. That's bad. I mean, it's not bad, it's just not good. But what else? Belonon War Anthem. Creatures you control get 1/1. So like I said in the last video, the creatures get 1/1 should be 3 mana. That's usually what it's been, and usually they get an additional effect. Except this time, you don't get the 1/1 right away. You get it after this card's destroyed, and all this card does is get you a 2/2 white and blue knight with vigilance. That's not enough. That doesn't do enough. It's not necessarily a good card. Invasion of Demetia, 3 mana. When this card enters the battlefield, you can gain 4 life and draw a card. Oh, that's amazing. What does it do when it's transformed? That's just a good card. If it's destroyed, you get a 4/4 flying with vigilance. And if you just play it, you just draw a card and gain life for 3 mana. That doesn't seem bad. Invasion of Gabakan. Okay. When this card enters the battlefield, look at a target opponent's hand. You may exile a non-land from it. As long as this card remains exiled, its owners may play it. Spellcast this way costs 2 more to cast. So it's kind of like semi-removal because you're only removing it until your opponent like wants to play it. For 2 mana, what does it transform to? Because it's not, semi-removal isn't the worst. What does it transform into? At the beginning of your end step, put a 1/1 counter on each creature that attacked this turn. Okay. Sacrifice creatures you control gain hexproof. Oh my gosh, this is kind of amazing. So you kind of get a card out of your opponent's hand because they can just play it again if they want. But then it also like becomes like an actual threat where your creatures can gain hexproof and indestructible. So it's just protection for your whole entire board. That's good. I like that a lot. Invasion of Theros, 3 mana. When Invasion of Theros enters the battlefield, search your library for an aura, god, or demigod, put it in your hand and shuffle. That's a good effect on its own. What does it transform into? So this card has lifelink and indestructible as long as you control at least 3 other enhancements. Whenever another enhancement enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. Wait a minute. 3 mana, you get a search. That's good. And then this, like, if it dies, it turns into whenever you play an enhancement, draw a card. That is a rare? That should have been a mythical. That is an amazing card. Seraph of Kanipa, 3 mana. Flying for 4 mana plus blood. You can transform this. Not impressive. A 2/2 flying for 3. What does it transform into? Phyrexian. Flying. Whenever Seraph of New Phyrexia attacks, you may sacrifice another creature or artifact. If you do, this card gets 2 attack and 1 defense. No, that's a pass. That's a pass. That's not, it's not bad. It's just not, it's not it. Sunblessed Guardian, 2 mana. For 5 mana plus blood, you may transform this card. The stats are terrible, but it's not necessarily super bad because it's still 2/2 for 2 mana. Furnace Blessed Conqueror. Whenever this card attacks, create a tapped attacking creature token that's a copy of it. Of this card, put a 1/1 counter on that token for each 1/1 counter on this card. Whoa! Sacrifice that token at the beginning of the end sub. Okay, so the token loses. Whoa! And this is an uncommon? Well, you have to pay 5 mana though, in order for the monster to actually become a threat. But still, that is interesting. That is an interesting uncommon. Harik Dune Shaper, 1 mana. For 4 mana and blood, you can transform this card. When it's transformed, it's 4/3 and has trample. It's not necessarily bad, it's just not good. Captive Weird, 1 mana. Defender, for 3 mana plus blood, you can transform this. Completed Conjurer. When this creature transforms into Completed Conjurer, exile the top card of your library. Until the end of your next turn, you may play that card. Is that it? How much you gotta pay for this? No, that's bad. You gotta pay 3 mana plus blood just to get a monster that looks at the top card of your library. And no, that is not it. Invasion of Abricios, 5 mana. When this card enters the battlefield, search your library and graveyard and or outside the game for an instant or sorcery card you own and reveal it. Put it in. What the fudge? If you, what does that doesn't, what did I just read? Or outside of the game, you, what? Huh? I don't get that. You can search your deck for, wait, no, but it's not even in your deck. You can play cards you're not even running. That doesn't, no, that can't be real. That can't be real, right? That is too good. You don't even need to play the card in your deck. It doesn't need to brick your deck and you still have access to it. Your whole entire library of Magic the Gathering. That is so powerful. I've never seen a Yu-Gi-Oh card like that, ever in my entire life. Invocation of Founders. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery from your hand, you may make, oh my god, and it copies a spell as a second effect. This is possibly one of the best cards I've ever read in my entire life. It's not like crazy game breaking, like you just win, but it's just the fact that you get to look outside of your deck for a card. You have every single instant card available to you in the entire game of Magic the Gathering. Invasion of Kamigawa, 4 mana. When this card enters the battlefield, tap target artifact or creature your opponent controls and put a stun counter on it. Oh, that's a good effect. For 4 mana? Maybe not for 4, maybe for like 3, but that's still a good effect. What does it transform into? Flying monster. When this card deals combat damage to a player or battle, draw a card. I like this. It's not necessarily the best card in the world, but it is average enough that it is good. It stops your opponent's monster for like 2 turns because it has a stun counter. It's 4 mana, which isn't necessarily a lot, and it does transform into a decent monster that can just generate you a bunch of advantage. Invasion of Segovia, 3 mana. When this card enters, create 2 1/1 Kraken creature tokens with trample. Legendary creature serpent. Non-creature spells you cast have convoke. Oh, so you can tap monsters? You can even tap those tokens that you created. At the beginning of your end step, untap up to what? What is this, a rare? I feel like this card's good enough. It can be played in almost any deck. You splash in water, you throw in this card. This might be a staple, actually. This might be a meta-defining staple. It gives all of your non-monster spells convoke. So you can just tap your monsters to play your spells, and then it untaps 4. So you get 4 mana at your end step for the cost of 3 mana total. This is a good card. This is a meta-defining card, 1,000,000,000%. Invasion of Vryan. Okay, when this card enters the battlefield, draw 3 cards, then discard a card. 4 mana? I mean, water decks kind of do that already. No, maybe not, might not be the worst. What else does it do? For 1 mana tap, sacrifice Mage Ring, copy target spell you control. So you're telling me water decks now have a draw card that also is a copy card. Like, it can copy one of your spells. That is a really good boost for water decks. No, I think I would run this in water because it could replace the cards that already like draw you cards in water, but you also get the additional fact that you can copy a spell. That just seems so powerful. I really like that. Gitakias. I don't know how you pronounce that. 5 mana. Ward 2. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell with mana value 3 or greater, draw a card. Oh, that's amazing. Exile this card, then return it to the battlefield transformed under its owner's control. Activate only as a sorcery and only if you have 7 or more cards in your hand. Wow. Okay, what does it transform into? Because you need 7 cards in your hand for this baby. Draw cards equal to the number of cards in your hand. You have no maximum hand size for as long as you control this card. Return all non-Phyrexian creatures to the owner's hand. Okay, it's just a field bounce. You may cast any number of spells from your hand without paying their mana cost. What? Exile this card and return it to the battlefield, and then it becomes a monster again. The only downside I will say is that you need 7 or more cards in your hand in order for it to transform. And when it transforms, you should just be winning the game. You have 7 cards in your hand already, and you draw cards equal to the number of cards. You literally draw 7 more. You have 14 cards in your hand. And then if you can survive until the 3rd one, you can play every single card for free. So I'm curious to see if anybody can develop a strategy where you fill up your hand with a bunch of cards in order to proc the transforming effect quicker. But regardless of that, it's a good card, but it's only good if you have 7 or more cards in your hand. Otherwise, it's just like, whatever. Order of Mirror, 2 mana. For 3 mana plus blood, transform this card. It's a 2/1. Whenever this card becomes blocked by a creature, that creature gets -1 and -1. No, I don't like it. Not good enough. Rona, Herald of Invasion, 2 mana. When you cast a legendary spell, untap this card. Oh, and you can tap this card, draw a card, and discard a card. 5 mana plus blood, you can transform it. What does it transform into? Rona Talarian Obliterator. Oh my gosh, she became like a scary monster. Trample. When a source of damage deals damage to this card, that source's controller exiles a card from their hand at random. That's just a strangely powerful effect. If it's a land card, you may put it onto the battlefield under your control. Otherwise, you may my brain! What the fudge am I reading? What? No. For 2 mana? This is too good. Too good. It's a 2 mana draw and discard, and you just need a tap. You don't pay mana. It's free. For 5 mana plus blood, which is quite possible to do, you get a boss monster, which is extremely scary. If your opponent even hurts it, they lose a card out of their hand, and you get that card. You take that card, and it's yours now. And you can play it for free. This is one of the best low mana cost cards in the entire set. This is undoubtedly the best low mana cost card in the entire set. Skyclave Aerialist, 2 mana. Flying. For 4 mana plus blood, you can transform this card. It's a 2/1 flying, 2 mana. Okay, whatever. What else does it do? Flying. When this creature transforms into this, look at the top card of your library. If it's a land, you may put it onto the battlefield. If you don't put a card onto the battlefield, put it into your hand. For 2 mana, you get a 2/1 flying creature, but if you pay 4 mana plus blood, you grab a card off the top of your deck. No, That's not it. Aetherblade Agent, 2 mana, Death Touch. Oh wow, it has Death Touch? For 4 mana plus blood, you can transform this. So already, it's not a really good card, but I think in draft it'll be very good just because it's a Death Touch for 2 mana. What does it transform into? Oh, he looks cool. It's like a cyborg. Death Touch. Whenever this card deals combat damage to a player or battle, draw a card. No, well, you're paying 4 mana plus blood for this, and all it does is have 3/3, and it still has Death Touch even when it's not transformed. Not necessarily the best. At best, it gets you 1 card. Arrayo, Widow of the Realm, 3 mana. Sacrifice another creature or artifact. This card deals X damage to a target opponent or battle, and you gain X life, where X is the sacrificed permanent's mana value. That's a cool effect. You can just like destroy your own stuff and deal damage to your opponent. I kind of like that. It's like sieging them. For 5 mana and blood, you can transform this card. It becomes Araya, Furnace Queen. Wow, that is a beautiful art. At the beginning of combat of your turn, return up to 1 target artifact or creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains haste. Exile it at the beginning of the next end step. I like that it's exile at the beginning of the next end step, because if it didn't say this, this card would just be bonkers. You get resources out of your graveyard, which is powerful, but you also lose them because they get banished. So they're exiled. They're just gone forever. So it's interesting. I think it's well balanced. I think it's an extremely well balanced card. I don't necessarily think it's like an OP meta defining card, but it is definitely a good card that people can splash into their dark decks because both of the effects are decent. They're both very good. Blight Reaper Talid, 2 mana. For 3 mana plus blood, you can transform this. It's a 2/2. Okay. It becomes, when this creature transforms into Talid or dies, create a 1/1 Phyrexian sap rolling creature token. No, nah, that's not it. That is not it at all. Invasion of Eldraine, 4 mana. When this card enters the battlefield, target opponent discard. What? What does it transform into? Pickle Fairies, flying. At the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, if that player has 2 or fewer cards in their hand, this card deals 2 damage to them. It was this close to being a very good card. It's not good. I wouldn't play this. There's a card, a death card that's 3 mana. It's discard 2 cards your opponent controls, and then you summon like a decaying zombie. That's just way better. It's less mana, and then you also get a resource like immediately. This one transforms into a monster that's not necessarily good. Invasion of Fiora, 6 mana. When this card enters the battlefield, choose 1 or both. Destroy all legendary creatures, destroy all non-legendary creatures. It's just a board wipe for 6 mana? Okay. What else? What did you transform into? Menace Death Touch. Whenever this card attacks, remove all counters from up to 1 target permanent. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you haven't been dealt combat damage since your last turn, you draw a card and you lose life. It's interesting because you're paying 6 mana for a board wipe, and Death had a board wipe, which was Meat Hook Massacre, but it's now banned in Standard. That card, I would say, is miles better than this card. But this card is a board wipe, and it also becomes a monster, which isn't bad, but it's not necessarily the best. It's a good monster. It has good stats. It's just the effect is kind of like meh. It's like, okay. Invasion of Innistrad, 4 mana. When this card enters the battlefield, target creature and opponent controls gets... Oh, so it's just removal for 1 monster. 4 mana? Okay, what else? What else? Deluge of the Dead. When this card enters the battlefield, create 2 black zombie creature tokens. For 3 mana, exile target card from your graveyard. If it was a creature card, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. So essentially, for 4 mana, you get removal of 1 monster. And then when it dies, it becomes 2 2/2 monsters. And then you also have the additional effect that you can just exile a monster from your graveyard and summon another 2/2 creature token. I like that black now has a removal that just continually generates you advantage. Invasion of Olgratha, 5 mana. When this card enters the battlefield, you can deal 3 damage to other targets you control and you gain 3 life. For 5 mana, you deal 3 damage. No. What does it transform into? Grandmother Rabi Sengir, flying. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, put a 1/1 counter on Grandmother and you gain life. Pass. Nezumi Freewheeler, 4 mana. Menace. When this card enters the battlefield, each player mills 3 cards. Okay, for 4 mana you can mill 3. For 5 mana plus blood, you can transform this card. Hideous Flesh Wheeler, Menace. When this creature transforms into this, put target permanent card with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. I think this card is very good if it was cheaper, because the back effect is cool. It's a very cool effect. And the monster isn't necessarily bad. Menace for 3/3. The only problem is it's 4 mana and the transform cost is too much. But I mean, it has good effects. It's just, it costs too much. It's too expensive. Shell Dread, 5 mana. Menace. When this card enters the battlefield, each opponent sacrifices a non-creature token or planeswalker. 5 mana, you can exile this card and then return it to the battlefield transformed. But you can only activate this if your opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard. For each opponent, destroy up to 1 target creature or planeswalker that player controls. Each opponent discards 3 cards and no string. Okay, that is the most powerful effect. 3 cards your opponent discards. Put all creature cards from all graveyards onto... So for 5 mana, you get removal of one of your opponent's monsters or planeswalkers, but they choose. And then for 5 more mana, and only if your opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard, you get one of the best effects. It just destroys a card, which is lame. It's not the best. But then the second one, your opponent discards 3. And then the last one, it's just reading it, it's just so bizarre. Every monster in every graveyard is now under your control. It's good, but at the same time, your opponent needs 8 in order for it to be good. Etali Primal Conqueror, 7 mana. Trample. When this card enters the battlefield, each player exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile a non-land card. You may cast any number of spells from among the non-land cards exiled this way without paying their mana cost. For 9 mana and blood, transform this card. Okay, what does it transform into? Etali Primal Sickness, so it becomes like a bony dinosaur. Trample Indestructible. Wow. Whenever Etali Primal Sickness deals combat damage to a player, they get that many poison counters. I don't like Etali. 7 mana for a 7/7 trample. Okay, whatever. And then for 9 mana plus blood, it transforms into a game-ending card. Nah, I'm not feeling this card. It just doesn't seem good enough. It seems actually kind of bad to be a rare. Should have been an uncommon, in my opinion. Harried Artisan, 3 mana. It has haste, it's a 2/3, it's fire. Wow, okay. So 3 plus blood, you can transform this card. It becomes flying haste 3/4. Would I run this in a low mana fire control beatdown strategy? No, this card's not good. If the transform was not a sorcery, it would have potential in being played in a lot of fire decks, because then you can just like cheese your opponent and transform it when it would be destroyed or removed. But it seems too slow and too weak, and the transform effect has no effect. It's just flying haste. Not good enough. Invasion of Callidium, 4 mana. When this card enters the battlefield, exile all cards from the hand, then draw that many cards. Until the end of your next turn, you may play cards exiled this way. For 4 mana, you essentially just recycle your hand. Discard a land. Pyre of the World Tree deals 2 damage to any target. Whenever you discard a land, exile the top card of your library and play this card this turn. No, I don't think this card is necessarily that good. It's 4 mana. If it was 3 or 2 mana, it would be amazing. But 4 mana, it's too costly. By that time, you want to be playing better cards. You don't want to spend your turn 4 just to banish a card and get cards into your hand that you can't even play. And then when it transforms, it just makes use of lands in your hand. It doesn't seem good. It seems like a very bad card. Invasion of Karasus, 4 mana. When this card enters the battlefield, it deals 3 damage to each creature and planeswalker. Okay, what else? Ward, pay 2 life. Whenever you cast a spell, this card deals 2 damage to each opponent. Now, this card seems kind of bad too. You're only dealing 3 damage. Yeah, it can be a potential board wipe, but at the same time, it's only 3 damage. And then besides that, it transforms into a monster that deals 2 damage, but it's only to the opponents. It's not to like select targets, so you can't just like pop cards your opponent has. Nah. Invasion of Metacedia. When this card enters the battlefield, you may discard a card. If you do, draw 2 cards. For 2 mana, okay, what else? Kyran Flame Rider. For 3 mana plus tap, discard a card. That's a lot. You have to pay 3 mana, you have to tap this card, and you have to discard. That's a lot right there. Create 2 1/1 blue and red elemental creature tokens. Creatures you control get 1 attack and gain haste until the end of the turn. So essentially, you just push for damage. For 2 mana, I like it. I like the card. Even though you have to pay 3 mana, tap this card and discard, you kind of get like a haste creator. Doesn't seem like the worst thing in the world. Invasion of Regadatha, 3 mana. When this card enters the battlefield, it deals 4 damage to another target battle or an opponent and deals 1 damage to up to 1 target creature. If a non-creature source you control would deal damage to a creature, battle, or an opponent, it deals that much damage plus 2 instead. Okay, the plus 2 instead is an extremely powerful effect, no? I think this is a decent effect because when it deals 2 more damage, that is really good. Very good effect. I like this card a lot. This is a good one. Invasion of Tadakid, 2 mana. When this card enters the battlefield, reveal any number of dragon cards from your hand. When you do, this card deals X damage plus 2 to any other target where X is the number of cards revealed this way. It transforms into this flying trample. Whenever a dragon you control attacks, it deals 2 damage to any target. Wait, it's a 4/4? It's 2 mana. This is a dragon battle god. This is amazing. This is amazing in a dragon deck. Look at this dog. Karina Spell Spear for 2 mana. Trample, Prowess. Oh wow, that's just good. It has Prowess, but it doesn't have haste. That's the only problem. 3+ blood and transforms into Giskian Spell Stalker. It has Trample, Ward 2, Prowess. Each instance a Prowess triggers separately. Okay. It doesn't have haste though. Yeah, it's a cool card. Very, very cool card. It just doesn't have haste. If it had haste, might be one of the better cards, but it doesn't, so it's kind of like, okay. Pyretic Prankster. For 3 mana plus blood, you can transform this card. When this card dies, each opponent sacrifices an artifact or a creature. How much is the summon? 2? No, that's a bad card. Uda Brask. For 4 mana. First strike, whenever you cast an instant or a sorcery spell, this card deals 1 damage to target opponent, add 1 fire. Huh. If you cast an instant or sorcery spell that's 1 mana, this card essentially refunds you infinitely. For 1 mana, exile this card and return it to the battlefield transformed. You can only activate as a sorcery and only if you cast 3 or more instant or sorceries this turn. Okay. What does it transform into? The Great Work deals 3 damage to target opponent and each creature they control. Create 3 treasure tokens. Until the end of the turn, you may cast instant or sorcery spells from any graveyard. If a spell cast this way would be put into the graveyard, exiled instead. I like this card for the simple fact that it's 4 mana for first strike 4/4. It also has the insane effect that every time you cast an instant or a sorcery, you get 1 fire. You also deal 1 damage, but the 1 mana that you get for playing a spell is so important because imagine if you're playing a fire water deck. And there's some water cards where it's like 1 mana and you like look at the top cards of your deck or you draw a card or whatever. You have this guy on the field, you keep casting those cards that are 1 mana that draw you a card and you just keep getting infinite advantage. You fill up your graveyard, you can transform this guy for free, and then now you have a saga that just does a lot and then it allows you to play cards from your graveyard again. Bonded Herd Beast, 5 mana. For 4 mana plus blood, you can transform this card. Okay. It has Menace. Is that it? Moving on. Not Vold Hermit, 4 mana. For 5 mana plus blood, you can transform this card. Whenever this card attacks, up to 1 other target creature has base power and toughness 5/5 until the end of the turn. It's a lot better than some of the other ones I've seen because the effect can actually boost up a token to become a 5/5 threat, which isn't bad, but this isn't necessarily a good card. It's more like, if you need a last card in like the draft, this is kind of decent. Herbology Instructor. When this card enters the battlefield, you gain 3 life. For 6 mana plus blood, you can transform this card. 2 mana for a 1/3. I like that. And you also gain life as soon as it enters the battlefield. That's cool. But for 6 plus life, it transforms into, when this creature transforms into this, target creature and opponent controls, it gets -0 attack, -0 defense until the end of the turn, where X is Malady Invoker's power. You're paying 6 mana for this? Oh man, this card was good. It was a 2 mana 1/3 that gets you something as soon as it's summoned. That's good. And then it transforms into something that's so lame. Whatever, man. That's disappointing. That was so close to being a good card. Invasion of Ikoria. X plus 2 trees. When this card enters the battlefield, search your library and or graveyard for a non-human creature card with a mana value X or less and put it onto the battlefield. If you search your library this way, shuffle. Zilardas, Apex of Ikoria. Reach. For each non-human creature you control, you may have that creature assign its combat damage as though it weren't blocked. Me no understand. What does that mean? So an 8/8 with Reach, which I think Reach is really good. And the on-field effect allows you to special summon a monster from your deck. So I can't really say if this card's good or not because I don't get this effect. I don't understand. The creature is assigned its combat damage as though it weren't blocked. But besides that, I mean, it searches your deck for something, which is pretty cool. I like that. Invasion of Ixalan, 2 mana. When this card enters the battlefield, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You reveal a permanent card from among them and put it onto your hand. Put the rest in the bottom of your library in any order. For 2 mana, you get to grab a card from your deck. And then if this dies, it transforms into Belligerent Regulasaur. Trample. Whenever you cast a spell, this card gains indestructible until the end of the turn. It's a 4/3. Yeah, this is a good card. This is a very, very, very good card. It gets you a search out of your deck, which is good, and then it transforms into a monster that can be indestructible. So it could potentially be on the board for many, many turns. Invasion of Muruganda, 5 mana. When this card enters the battlefield, put a 1/1 counter on the target creature you control. Then that creature fights up to one target creature you don't control. But it's 5 mana. What does it transform into? Primordial Plasm. At the beginning of your combat of your turn, another target creature gets +2/+2 and loses all abilities until the end of the turn. This card kind of removes that, oh, well, it can't attack part and just lets it attack anyways. So this card has the potential to be used in strategies where there are monster cards that you want to negate their effects. Like, you want to negate your own monster effects. It sounds bizarre, but there are cases where you do want to do those things. Invasion of Chandelier for 5 mana. When this card enters the battlefield, return up to 3 target permanent cards from your graveyard to your hand. Leyland Surge. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may put a permanent card from your hand on. Whatever's in your hand, just play it. Who cares? Like, wow. Okay, let me cheese out my stuff then. Thank you. That's a cool card. I'm glad it's in the game. Invasion of Zidikad, 4 mana. When this card enters the battlefield, search your library for up to 2 basic lands and put them onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. I like that. Very, very good. What else? Awakened Skyclave. Vigilance Haste. Ooh. As long as this card is on the battlefield, it's a land in addition to its other types. So essentially for 4 mana, you get 2 lands from your deck onto the battlefield, and then you get a monster, which is, it's a good monster, Vigilance Haste, not bad, but it can also just be a land. I think that's a power crept version of the grass cards that are already in the game, because not only do you get to search your deck for 2 cards, but you also get a monster, which is another land. So essentially get 3 lands. It's cool. Alcridios Reborn, 3 lands. Reach, it's a 4/5. Oh my gosh, I like this. 6+ blood, please transform into something good. Alcridios Engine of Ruin, reach, lifelink, it's 6/6. Whenever this card or another non-token Hydra you control dies, create a 3/3 green and white Phyrexian Hydra token with reach and a 3. You create 2 tokens? Huh. Or another non-token Hydra? So is this like a Hydra boss? I've never seen the Hydra archetype, but all I can say from this card is for 3 mana, you get a 4/5 reach. That's good. And then it can transform into an even better monster that just keeps generating you advantage in a Hydra deck. I like it. Very, very cool. Vorinclex, 5 mana. Trample, Reach. Whenever this card enters the battlefield, search your library for up to 2 forest cards, reveal them, put them in your hand, and shuffle. 5 mana, it's Trample, Reach, 6/6, and then immediately as it's summoned, you already get advantage. You get 2 lands. Wow. For 8 mana, exile this card and return it to the battlefield transformed under its owners. It's activate only as a sorcery. It transforms into the Grand Evolution. Mill-time cards. Put up to 2 creatures from among the mill cards onto the battlefield. That's the first one? That's the first effect. That is the best effect. Oh, wow. I like, you might be able to tell from my voice. That is a good effect. Distribute 7 1/1 counters among any number of target creatures you control. That's okay. Until the end of the turn, creatures you control gain. For 1 mana, this creature fights target creature you don't control. Oh, it becomes like removal. And then it goes back to becoming a monster, and then you get 2 more forest cards. Wow. I like this card. It generates you advantage, and then it becomes a saga that generates you advantage, and then it goes back to being a monster, which generates you advantage again. This just seems like a very cool card. Invasion of Aura. This is plain, water, death, fire, grass. 5 mana total. When Invasion of Arasa enters the battlefield, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile 2 non-land cards with a mana value 4 or less. You may cast one of those 2 cards without paying its mana cost, put one of them into your hand, and put the other exiled this way onto the bottom of the library in a random order. So let me get this straight. You exiled 2 cards, you can play one of them for free, and the other one, does it go into your hand or does it get exiled? If it goes into your hand, this is good because you play a card for free and you get a card for free, or you don't get it for free, you paid 5 mana for it. But if it gets exiled, it's kind of like you just play a card for free and that's it. What does it transform into? Awaken the Maelstrom. This card is all colors. Target player draws 2 cards. You may put an artifact card from your hand onto the battlefield. Create a token that's a copy of a permanent you control. Distribute 3 1/1 counters among 1, 2, or 3 creatures you control. Destroy target. That's not real, right? So this card at first seems kind of lackluster because it's 5 mana of 5 different colors. In order to just look at 2 cards on the top of your deck, yeah, you get to play one for free. I don't know if the other one's exiled or added to your hand. It gets crazy when it transforms. When it transforms, you draw 2 cards. You can put an artifact in your hand for free on the field. You can create a token copy of any permanent you control. You can put 3 counters on any monsters you control. And then you can just destroy a card your opponent controls. You have, how many effects is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's a cool card, but I don't know if it's good because it is 5 mana, 5 different colors. And the first effect isn't necessarily good. The battle effect when it transforms is amazing. This is just an incredible card. But yeah, it needs to be transformed. And if it's not transformed, it's just it's okay. So I'm interested to see what people do with that card. Invasion of Amonkhet. This is 3 mana. When this card enters the battlefield, each player mills 3 cards, then each opponent discards a card, and you draw a card. Okay, what does it transform into? You may have this card enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature card in your graveyard, except it's a 4/4 black zombie in addition to its other types. So essentially for 3 mana, your opponent mills 3 cards, they discard also in addition to milling, and you draw a card. So that's good. And then it just copies any monster effect in your graveyard and becomes a 4/4 zombie. I like that a lot. I like that so much. That is a cool card. Invasion of Asgol. When this card enters the battlefield, target player sacrifices a creature or planeswalker and loses 1 life. For 2 mana? Okay. What else? Menace. At the beginning of your end step, put a 1/1 counter on its card if a permanent was put into the graveyard from the battlefield this turn. I don't see it seeing play. I'm glad it's an uncommon. Could have been a common. Invasion of Elgronon. 2 mana. When this card enters the battlefield, you can create a treasure token, and then you may discard a card, and if you do, draw a card. Wait, let me get this straight. 2 mana, and then it gets you 1 mana, so essentially this is 1 mana, and then also you discard and you draw a card. What does it transform into? Please don't be something good, because this card's already amazing. Turuga Cliff Charger, Trample. When this card enters the battlefield, you may discard a card. If you do, search your library for land or battle card. No, it's good. It's so good. This is one of the best battle cards in the set. It draws you a card. It's my brain. It's 2 mana and it gets you a treasure token, which can just be mana, and not a tapped treasure token. You can play that the same turn. You discard a card, draw a card, and then it becomes a monster that searches you a battle. Or land, any land, not a basic land, any land. Or any battle, including itself. No, that is a nutty card. Invasion of Kaladesh, 2 mana. When this card enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact or creature token with flying. Okay, what else? A flying Aetherwing golden skill power is equal to the number of artifacts you control. Okay, crew 1. Let me get this straight. 2 mana, and you get a 1/1 monster with flying. No. Invasion of Kellum. When Invasion of Kellum enters the battlefield, up to 2 target creatures each get 2 attack and gain vigilance and haste until the end of the turn. Fire Plane. I like it. I like it a lot. What else? What does it transform into? Valor Reach Tag Team. Create 2 3/2 red and white warrior creature tokens with whenever this creature or at least one other creature attacks, put a 1/1 counter on this creature. So Invasion of Kellum is okay because it does have a decent effect, but it doesn't do too much. And when it transforms, it gets you 2 monsters that keep getting bigger and bigger. But yeah, not really much besides that. It's an okay card. Invasion of Lorwyn, 6 mana. When this card enters the battlefield, destroy a target non-elf creature an opponent controls with a power X or less, where X is the number of lands you control. Why? For 6 mana, you're removing 1 monster. Please transform into something good. This card's power and toughness are each equal to the number of lands you control. Oh, this card sucks. Moving on. Invasion of Mag. When this enters the battlefield, put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. It's 4 mana. Ward 2, at the beginning of your end step, put a 1/1 counter on a target creature you control. No, it's not good enough. What else? Invasion of New Capina. When this card enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice an artifact or a creature. When you do, exile target artifact or creature an opponent controls. So you have to play this card for 2 mana of 2 different colors, remove 1 of your own resources in order to remove 1 of your opponent's resources. Bad. What does it transform into? Holy Frazel Cannon. Whenever the equipped creature attacks, put a 1/1 counter on that creature and each other creature you control that shares a creature type with it. I feel like it's decent. It's not amazing, it just feels decent. Invasion of New Phyrexia. When this card enters the battlefield, create X 2/2 white and blue creature tokens with vigilance. Yeah, I can see why it's a mythical. You can get a lot of advantage from this one card. What does it transform into? Teferi, hey, I know that guy. Draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards unless you discard a creature card. You get an emblem with knight you control gets 1 attack and has ward 1. Tap X number of creatures you control, shuffle target non-land permanent and opponent controls with mana value X or less into its owner's library. I don't know why it's a mythical. I feel like this should have been a rare. It doesn't seem super powerful, but I can see it being kind of good because essentially for 4 mana you get 2/2 monsters, or for 5 mana you get 3 2/2 monsters. It just keeps generating monsters the more mana you pay. Invasion of Pyrulia. When this card enters the battlefield, scry 3, then reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land or a double face card, draw a card. It's slow, it's too slow. If this card was instead scry 3, add one of them to your hand. If you added a double face card or land, draw a card. So in addition to adding a card you draw, it would be good. Like there's cards that do that, but better. What does it transform into? Trample, ward 2. Other transform permanents you control have trample and ward. Okay, I can see why. I can see why now. Yeah, the transform effect is pretty good in a battle deck or any deck that like transforms, even the ones with the Phyrexian token egg incubator thingies. Yeah, this seems pretty valuable in that. But besides that, I mean, it's only good for the second effect. Invasion of Talavada. When this card enters the battlefield, return target non-land permanent card from the graveyard onto the battlefield. Creature tokens you control get 1 attack and have lifelink. At the beginning of your end step, create a 1/1 white and black spirit creature token with flying. So Talavada is essentially a reborn because you get to bring back a monster from your graveyard, and then in addition, when it becomes an enhancement, you generate stuff during your end phase every single turn. A 2/1 flying with lifelink. That is kind of decent. I mean, there's been reborns in the game already, but this one also becomes an enhancement which generates advantage. So I like that. I think it's a little more power crept version of the reborn cards. This is the last card. Invasion of Xerax. 4 mana. When this card enters the battlefield, return up to 1 target creature to its opponent's hand. For 4 mana you can bounce a card. What does it transform into? Because that's not impressive at all. Flying. This power and toughness are equal to the number of creatures you control. That's it. That's the last card. No, that's lame. Please, more? That's it. Damn! These cards were cool. So my takeaway from the battle cards is that these battle cards are meant to be used in the deck or archetypes that they're representing. So New Phyrexia or Knights or whatever it may be, New Capina or Mag or Lorwyn. I think that's cool. I think they're providing support to old archetypes, to older decks, which is always a good thing. I think that when you support older things that people do kind of play, maybe at a casual level, it's still a good experience and I think it's healthy for the game. I'm impressed with these cards. I'm excited to see what they create in the future. I'm more excited to see what other people think about these cards. Like you, the viewer, I want to know your opinion. These cards are cool, and there hasn't been a new like Magic the Gathering thing since like when did Sean Dunn say? 2007. So yeah, it's been a while since there's been a new Magic the Gathering card type. And I'm glad I got to share it with you. Regardless, that's the end of the video. I really do hope you enjoyed it. Hope you're excited for the cards. They're already out, so maybe you can tell me your thoughts on them. Anyways, that's going to be it. Hope you have a great day or night, and I'll see you later. Peace.